What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Twin Sons Podcast, episode 56, brought to you, as always, by RuneterraCCG.com. Make sure to stay tuned as we get, hopefully, a balance patch in the next week or two so we can get some good takes on what's coming up. Den, most recently, EU champion from the first season, will put up a really sweet total article about really just taking beginner decks and just slightly upgrading them. So it's really good new player content if you're missing out on that. I know we have a lot of new player listeners as well, so make sure to tune in, check out that most recent article there. And this episode, we're joined by Josh, as always, but no one cares about Josh. Most importantly, joined by ImpetuousPanda. Welcome to the show, buddy. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Josh, you can say hi if you want.
Hi, guys.
I'm also always very impressed you guys are doing the 56th episode. That's honestly quite impressive. Like the consistency, especially from like the beginning of when content starts ramping up for a game. That's really cool. So congrats on that as well.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I think we missed 3 weeks so far, but that's it. So I was pretty proud of that. Pretty proud of making most of these weeks. Even a week like this, when we're all kind of just waiting for something to happen with the meta.
You have to create content out of somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not in the game, so start reaching out somewhere else, because if not, it's pretty doomed.
That's it. Just get the best guests you can, which we did. Exactly. So we're going to jump in and talk just a little bit about your history and stuff before we start diving into, obviously, some predictions for content coming up and just all of your content in general, for sure. But I want to know, so there was a person on Twitter, like right before we came on, and I promised now that I'd have to ask this question one, but they want to know like how you speak Spanish and all of that, because you're going on a Spanish podcast next week, right?
Yes, on Monday. It's kind of a debate because I obviously don't look very Spanish, but I am from Madrid. I am from Spain. My dad's Spanish, but my mom is Swedish, which is why I have kind of the Scandinavian genes, and why it makes things very confusing. And then I also moved when I was little a lot due to my dad's work. So I was in Brazil for 2 years, actually, which is why Deech, I think, is asking about the Portuguese. And I was in Miami for 10 years, which is why I speak English with, not a Spanish accent, which is, I think, for most people when they listen to someone, speaking English, if they're Spanish, it doesn't sound usually all that great due to the accent. But in my case, I was very fortunate. I was able to live, and learn it natively. And so I don't sound very Spanish and I don't look very Spanish. So people are always very, very confused when they eventually find out that I'm actually Spanish and speak Spanish natively as well. But that's the story of like kind of my background. And then I moved back to Madrid for high school, university, and now I'm in Warsaw since like a year and a bit ago, but very much in Europe still.
Well, very much more traveled than we are. We were talking before the show that he knows our geography of the United States better than we do. So I'm impressed. Josh and I, we know nothing outside of like our little Philadelphia, New Jersey area. So.
Yeah, very secluded. Home bodies.
I really like geography a lot, and like doing like these like there's websites you can do like trivia, like just type in countries for like you have a map and it fills in automatically. And I just do those occasionally as just like a test, and so I keep up to date with my geography knowledge. But I do like it. I do like traveling, so it's something it's important to know if you're traveling somewhere, know where it is, know how long the flight is, etc. So that goes hand in hand. But
that's awesome.
Makes sense.
Fantastic. Well, firstly, the first thing we ask every guest that comes on really is just what's their gaming history like. We've gotten so many different answers, so I'm really interested to hear where's your gaming history. It doesn't have to just be card games, but you can lead it into that if you'd like.
All right. So it all started when I was maybe 6. With a PS1 and Game Boy Color, like that generation of gaming, I suppose. And then I was mostly a console gamer with like PlayStation 2 and PS3 and kind of all kinds of genres and single player games, just really anything I could get my hands on, but not really any kind of strategy games. As a teen, I started playing Call of Duty a lot when it came out. And that's also kind of where my story with content creation started, because I started doing like YouTube gameplays, like when YouTube gaming started. That kind of craze maybe like a decade ago. It was mostly with, Call of Duty as like the big thing where you would just record a gameplay and do commentary later. And then people started blowing up after that and other games came out and everything. But for me, it was with Call of Duty. And I did like 3 years of YouTube in like my teenage years. And it went pretty well. I mean, for the time where things were just starting off, it's obviously not how it is now where you have millions of subscribers and views and everything. But I had like 25,000 subs around when I stopped. I did it for like 3 years, and I mean, maybe not daily uploads, but I had maybe like 300, 400 videos uploaded by the time I kind of stopped doing when I started university. So it was like a big part of my teenage years and like gaming years. I would play a lot of Call of Duty, obviously. and I enjoyed it a lot. And I competed in like Call of Duty esports kind of maybe like a year and a half later with Ghosts. Came out maybe like
Nice.
7 years ago.
Mhm.
And like at a semi-pro level, because back then I was playing on PS3 and the main circuit was on Xbox 360. So it wasn't like the same level, but I still traveled to events around like national tournaments in Spain and in Europe. So that was the extent of my esport experience until that point. And then I got into card games through Gwent, which is the Witcher card game. I played The Witcher when it came out, and I loved Gwent, like the mini game inside The Witcher.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was just fascinated. I stopped playing The Witcher and just started playing like the in-game Gwent for like a few weeks. And then when the standalone game came out, I had never played strategy games and wasn't really thinking I would. I mean, I didn't see myself enjoying these games as much. I like more like action-based stuff until that point, but I enjoyed it actually quite a lot. And I was actually pretty good at the whole strategy mindset and analysis and pattern recognition and stuff. So I started playing more and more, and I got, started climbing the ranks, and eventually I enjoyed writing a lot as well. So I started making like deck guides on this like main community website, and those kind of took off, and then it kind of snowballed into me like writing for that page full time and interviewing some content creators and players and stuff. And I got to pretty much like top one in the world at the time on the ladder. Well, I mean, it's going to sound kind of cocky if I say it, but I got number one, and I had another account that I was number two in. So I had both spots.
Pure domination.
And that kind of, I had a lot of free time, and I joined the game a lot. So
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me a window to start doing content and writing deck guides and kind of doing some YouTube videos or some streams. Even I streamed a bit back then.
Yeah.
And that was most of my story with the gaming aspect of it, basically.
Wow. Geez, yeah, that's definitely a first for us. I mean, a lot of people, just come on and they're like, yep, Magic. That's where they start with their card game history. So Gwent is significantly further down the road, but that's awesome. And I don't think anyone, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but has had like an actual esports background.
Yeah,
Call
no
of
one,
Duty, right?
no one yet.
I mean, I wouldn't call it esports because it was like, I did go to like national tournaments in Spain and a tournament in Amsterdam, but again, it wasn't like the highest level because there was a big distinction between the Xbox, where all the official sponsors and circuits were, and then PS3, which still had a community, of course, but it wasn't like super elite. But
it's still esports.
It's like pro, I think
it's like minor league hockey is still considered pro sports, so
we'll count it.
I played minor league Call of Duty. That's my background.
I'm still impressed. Yeah, I could never make it.
I would never make it. I could barely. I can barely shoot someone in Valorant. I can't imagine how bad I was back then at Call of Duty.
Yeah, right?
I think it's very much muscle memory. Once you play enough, I mean, maybe some people are obviously going to be much more skilled, but a lot of it, I would pick up a controller now and try and play Call of Duty. I would be terrible. Like my little sister, if you played for a week, she could beat me. But because it's just really a lot of muscle memory. Once your fingers know what they're doing, you're not even thinking. It's just immediate.
My fingers never know what they're doing. So.
You have to get past that first step first. If you don't, then maybe it's a bit doomed.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I wanted to hear about your content creation history. You touched on it a lot there, but it started, I mean, number one was YouTube, you said, way back for COD. That was the first entrance into it?
Yeah. I mean, it was, I never thought I didn't really enjoy like speaking publicly. In my teenage years, I wasn't shy or introverted, just not really, like in normal situations, social situations, it was fine. But speaking publicly, like in a project presentation or something like that, I didn't really enjoy that like pressure.
Right.
And I would get a bit nervous and stuff. So I never thought I would do anything related to speaking for a living, kind of. But the YouTube videos were pretty easy. I would just play, Call of Duty until I got a really good game. I'll get a good kill streak and stuff, and then I would just be recording everything and then just commentate over it. And at the time, I mean, I was like 15. I would just talk about random stuff. I don't even want to think about what I was speaking about in those commentaries. But I was pretty good at the game and had some pretty good gameplay. So eventually kind of took off, and some bigger channels kind of promoted me in a way. And that's how it worked with YouTube. And I just ended up doing that for 3 years. So that was like the main thing. But when university started, I wasn't too interested in Call of Duty anymore. It was a bit too, I mean, the pubs were there was like no skill-based matchmaking. So it was very just going in and getting maybe 100 kill streak with like some OP, setup. And then just, it wasn't really that, kind of like abusing third and like kill streaks that would just loop, and one kill streak would get the next one. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, defeated the purpose a bit of playing it, which is why I got into like the competitive side later, because that was more fulfilling. But I didn't really want to do more YouTube stuff with related to that. So I stopped for all my university years. And then once I finished my degree, that's when I started playing Gwent. And I've always enjoyed writing, so that became my window into like writing deck guides and stuff. And obviously, when you're first on ladder and you're writing a deck guide, you have that kind of that reason for people to read your guides, and that it validates kind of the writing. So that worked out, and it just kind of blew up from there. And I did like interviews with certain people, and one of those people was Life Coach. I don't know if you guys know him from Hearthstone.
Yeah, definitely.
He's like the Hearthstone pro, he's an ex-poker player, and he got into Gwent when it launched as well for the first like year or so. He was really into it. And it's kind of, he was maybe one of the bigger like popular Hearthstone streamers that kind of jumped ship to Gwent.
Yeah.
And he's an interesting, in a good way, guy, very, very interesting guy, and older obviously than most people I think in esports right now, but super, super cool guy. And he was hosting like community tournaments he has a mansion in Vienna with like an indoor pool and stuff. He would host tournaments there, just invite the best players in Gwent. He would fly them out. He would put up a prize pool, and it would be like half tournament, half party for the weekend. And I got invited to the very first one he did, and that's kind of how I got into casting as well. I was there as a player, but I lost in the first round. It was just an 8-player bracket, and whoever wasn't playing could cast the matches because they were being broadcasted online, but didn't hire any official casters or anything.
Gotcha.
So I got to cast the whole tournament because I lost in the first round, and that's when CDPR were about to start their official like esports circuit, and so they thought I explained things well, and I had obviously the kind of the pro player level and the knowledge to explain a card game pretty well. So they offered me the job, and I saw it as a more responsible decision than trying to play, because playing was fun at the time, and I thought I was pretty good, but I knew that you can get unlucky in a qualifier and not make any money, not be able to make a living for that month or for 2 months, or things got much more competitive as well in Gwent after that. So I think I made the right decision. And casting, obviously, you can build that into a career, whereas playing Gwent, once Gwent dies or once you're not interested in playing anymore, none of that can go on your resume. None of that really adds towards any kind of job experience, really.
Yeah. Huh. So two things. I never realized he was one of the first big guys to make the switch to Gwent. I didn't know much of Gwent's history at all, so that's pretty cool. Secondly, who in the Runeterra community has a mansion? Because once COVID's over, we have to do that. That sounds
LAN parties.
LAN party for a tournament. Oh my gosh.
I think we did like 4
tournaments
there, and they were honestly one of the. I mean, I met Mogwai, of course, was one of my co-casters in the Gwent circuit, which is where I met him, and I knew him, since those 4 or 5 years ago. And Swim was also a very good player. I mean, still is, of course, but back then was also. I think he played in the tournament that I got invited to. I'm pretty sure, maybe the second one. But he was there as well, and it was just a crazy experience, and honestly, really one of the funnest moments. It's not really professional. It's not like you have a dress code and rehearsals and all this like I had with CDPR. It was just a mansion. There was drinks and shit at night, and then during the day it was a tournament. That's awesome. Very casual. We were like hungover the next day for the cast and everything, and it was no one cared, no one said anything. So it was honestly very, very fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a convention type of vibe where everyone's just kind of hanging out playing games, but except you just have a pool and a mansion there. That's so cool. Josh, you want to take the next one here?
Yeah, I guess we'll start moving into lore. So basically, how did you first hear about it? Did you hear about the open beta? Did you see after that?
I think it was probably when they launched the initial announcement with like the video, like the 10-year anniversary, plus like this highlight reel, like the new games. So we're working on the fighting game and the card game and everything. And for me, obviously already in a position of, I kind of went full time with casting with Gwent and CDPR. And then I also casted with a lot of the auto battles that came out, with Underlords, with Valve, and also Artifact.
Right.
I was very much like in the mindset of this is my job, and I had to look for job opportunities. And Gwent is still doing fine from I mean, they would release on mobile and they still have an esports scene and all this, but I could tell there was a limit to how big Gwent would be. Gwent reached its limit and there wasn't really any more growth there. I was always looking for new opportunities, and Artifact sadly died, perished very quickly. I had high hopes, and I was, really involved with the game, really involved with Valve even as well from like the beta moments. And I think I'm the only caster that cast. There was like 3 big LAN tournaments for Artifact, and I'm the only one that casted all 3, and then that just went to shit. So it was a bit sad. But when Riot announced Runeterra, there couldn't be a bigger announcement in the CCG market, especially from my position where I'm looking for, esport opportunity, someone that, a company that has the financial support to run an esports scene and pick that up from the bottom and make it an actual viable thing.
Absolutely.
And also the pull of like having people from League of Legends and having, make it an actual successful card game. So when it announced, I was honestly, obviously very, very happy to have a new game to play that I thought had the chance to be very good, and it is. But also to have like that esports side of it where I could maybe move into the game and find some opportunities to continue casting. And obviously I enjoy casting card again. It's, obviously a big passion of mine. So finding a company that can kind of support that and create an environment where that can thrive was great news for me. So I was very, very happy to see that video announcement.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy you jumped on board. You've gotten to do so much too already. So
Have your initial expectations been fulfilled at least with lore being released and starting casting for it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think Artifact did a lot well in innovating in card games, and the things they did with the initiative system and a lot of things were very good.
Yeah.
But Runeterra as well, I think immediately you can tell that it's Riot that's making this game, so it's incredibly polished and everything that maybe gameplay and balance is one thing, which some games can do more innovative things, less innovative things, or copy Hearthstone or not copy Hearthstone, whatever. But everything else is almost just as important. I mean, Artifact died because they didn't know how to handle the psychological aspect of playing and wanting to play the game, and how do you reward players for playing it. But Riot, obviously, with their experience with League of Legends and just in gaming and knowing they're a competent company, they've made a game that is just incredibly polished from a graphic standpoint, from a sound effect standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and that was even maybe more important than the gameplay itself. But the gameplay is also very, very good, I think. The diversity, maybe not in this meta, but in general, has been very, very good for a card game, incredibly good. And like the spell banking system is great. The spell management system just did a lot of things that weren't maybe the most innovative, but did everything really well, really polished, I think is like the main takeaway.
I really like that you're looking at it from like a business perspective, right? This is the first time we've heard anything like that from a guest coming in. You're like, all right, well, what if I want to commit time to making content for this game? What are they going to offer me? And yeah, having it be a Riot game, right? That, they've had a ton of success with multiple games. Their esports scene is massive for their other games. So it's like, yeah, it makes sense why, but it also makes sense why you had high hopes for Artifact. I saw your tweet with, the most hours played for Steam games was Artifact, and then Underworlds, right? Or Underlords, yeah. Like, yeah, rip Artifact. But yeah, I mean, Valve did the same thing. They had a huge scene with Dota, right? And they still do competitively. So you think that's going to take off, and then, yeah, I mean, I'm glad Lore's hitting the right marks, at least for now. And then, I mean, moving into the content that you've gotten to do already, I mean, there's some content that you're doing yourself, like the massive surveys and things like that, which are amazing to partake in and also read the results. It's so funny, always seeing, for the longest time, just seeing Vlad at the bottom and just being so sad, right, Josh? But you've also got, you're casting Fight Night every week. You've also casted the EU seasonal twice now, right? So yeah, I mean, you want to just talk about your content, how that's all been going so far and everything?
So when I got into the game, I've never really been someone to do like streaming every day on Twitch and YouTube videos every day. I used to do that, of course, back then, and I know what it's like and everything, but it's a big time commitment. It's you have to really, if you're in it, you can't just be in it a little bit. Like the consistency, I think, is the most important thing. If you're streaming kind of like not really taking it seriously, I think there's really little value to get from that. So I was mostly just playing the game and then thinking of what kind of content I could do that I thought was missing, that I thought was interesting to have in the Runeterra community. Because not to bash, YouTubers that do just gameplay videos every day, that's their thing. And there's people that like certain personalities and certain content creators like Mogwai or Swim, whatever, that they have obviously a huge success.
Yeah.
But to me, just making a video with, Braum Vlad or whatever deck it is and posting on YouTube and just kind of that cookie cutter formula isn't really so exciting to me. And I don't see it as something that the community would need or would want. So I thought of ways that I could add kind of value in different formats, like surveys, for example. I think is something that, for me, I just love data and I love stats and knowing for certain things. When I see like people say, "Oh, TF is broken," I'm like, "Okay, how broken is it? So where's TF on the broken meter?" And if you tell someone, they'll tell you, "Oh, he's a 5 out of 5. He's terrible." But when you look at like a huge sample size and you have like 1,000 responses, you can get much more clear cut ratings and you can compare and everything. So I think it adds a lot of things you can make content out of, and understand things with certainty. With you can tell, oh, this is the most broken champion according to the community, and that perspective I think is really cool to have. So the surveys worked at the beginning, people liked them, and I just kept doing them since then because I'm just interested in doing it. I would do it regardless of if they worked or not, because I just like the data. But if people like it as well, then even better.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love them. I think it's great to get, it's a mix of both. You want to get actual hard data from Riot when they share it, or from Mobalytics all the time, but like perception is reality a lot of times in these games. So it's great to see the perception of, okay, well, what is really bothering people the most, and why is it not Fiora? But yeah, but totally.
We talked to, I think when Ruben was on the Progress Day podcast as well, we talked about it a little bit, and I think he understands it quite well. And I was happy to see the devs understand that it's not all like balance numbers and win rates. It's also perception, because it's incredibly important to see, not just how pro players and content creators perceive a meta, but how the more not casual, but like the general Reddit population, and then the actual casual player base that doesn't even know there's a subreddit for Runeterra. They just play on their phone or play it on their PC, which is 90% of people, which a lot of people don't. That's one of the biggest problems with content creators and pro players, is that a lot of people I've seen don't have the right perspective and don't understand their relative view of the game and of the content and of the balance compared to the actual. And the majority of the player base is what devs care about, because of the people that pay money and the people that they're the biggest population of the players.
Yeah, keep the lights on, right?
Like what they care about and what they think about the game and so the surveys aren't perfect, because of course you're catering to an audience that is already on the subreddit or on Twitter or are like super involved with the game already. So they're hardcore players, but it does give you, I think, a broad view of what Reddit thinks about certain champions, which might be wrong. Some champions are rated very highly that I think maybe shouldn't be there, or Vlad's rated very low when he shouldn't be. Right. And I think this survey actually is going to prove kind of how not useless the data is, but how you have to really understand what you're looking at to get any value from it. Because Vlad, for example, the champion that has changed, he was always rated under 2, which is like needs a nerf rating in the survey parameters.
Yeah.
And he hasn't changed, but I guarantee you this survey, he will be rated like 3.0, which is perfectly balanced and perfectly fine and healthy, simply because someone decided to, I mean, it got a few additions, sure, with Bloodletter and Ice Shard. But the moment someone decides to build a deck and just put this on like the mind of people that, oh, this is actually maybe playable, they play it, they see it's kind of playable, and then it's certainly playable. And nothing has changed, but it's just the perception of this being playable makes it playable. And just with me tweeting it, or Lobster tweeting it, or like certain pro players tweeting it and giving that validity, it changes the whole outcome of balance in the game without anything having changed. So I think it's a perfect example. You have to understand what you're reading when you see the survey results, because Reddit can be Reddit sometimes, but I think it's interesting information regardless.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and definitely, like you're saying, it's, the people who you are, or Lobster, like you're saying, are tweeting that out are not the everyday player. That's a big thing too. It's, that you're going to see it in the higher tier, because people who are in Masters and Diamond and things like that are probably the people who are slightly more invested, who are going to Twitter, going to Reddit, doing all that. So it is, and that's, like you said, even 10% might be generous if that's the player base, right? The player base is so massive. It's so many people out there playing this game. So yeah, I mean, I love it. You just said the Progress Day podcast, and that was like literally an amazing interview you guys had. I totally forgot to not even include this on your lore content, but yeah, that interview with Ruben was great.
When I gave you guys props for the consistency about the 56th episode, we got to 10, and that's where the boat caught fire and it sunk. So I'm like, all right, props to these guys for sticking with it. In Gwent as well, one of my co-casters, his name's McBeard. He started a podcast when the game started. And he started with a game like open beta. He was like an OG when people started playing in the community. Yeah. Some pro players started playing like a year ago, some 2 years ago. This guy was there like when the game started. Yeah. And he had a podcast since the very beginning. And the podcast ended up with, I think he stopped really creating content for Gwent a few months ago, but it ended with like 200 episodes, which I think is super impressive. So you guys kind of remind me of that level of like dedication and consistency.
Well, appreciate it. It is easy, Josh and I have known each other forever, so like second grade or so. So it's easy, I live pretty close to Josh, so we can kind of hold each other accountable a lot easier. It is tough, we're not all as busy. You guys have so much content. Like you said, the Twitch and YouTube grind is insanely difficult. So I totally understand with how busy you guys have, but I mean, the episodes you did have were amazing. So, and I know Ruben has wanted to come back on. He said he was still lined up to come back on. So if you ever bring it back, I will be there.
It's mostly Mogwai because he's the main host, and obviously he's super busy with his YouTube and everything, and he had a lot of success this year with Runeterra in general.
Yeah.
And he's also doing a few other things outside of Runeterra and like the YouTube, Twitch stuff now, which is why he's a bit more busy. But every week I literally send him Discord messages like, "Hey, progress day, what about it? Want to start this week? What about?" And because he said before he wants to do it again, but he's just, "Oh, I'm too busy," and he's someone that can be sometimes a bit. Not lazy because he puts in a lot of work, but he can just forget to answer messages and kind of live in his own world a bit.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how sure this is that we might start again soon, but maybe it's a possibility in the next few weeks we'll bring it back, hopefully. So we'll see.
Very nice. Josh, any other questions about the surveys or the podcast there or content in general until we move on? We're going to talk about casting for a second. Josh, you got anything else before that?
No, I think that was like perfectly described, and I liked hearing your thoughts about it instead of just seeing the surveys. I liked hearing like your what you're trying to gain from it. So,
and one funny thing I haven't mentioned, it doesn't exist now in the surveys, but before I used to have like these text boxes under like every rating, so you can rate at least 3 out of 5, whatever, and you can write under if you think she's a 1 or a 5, so you think she's either very weak or very strong. Write why. And and I can people just write like a short answer, and I would just accumulate maybe like for some cards hundreds of answers and like opinions of how to balance it. I would literally spend an hour of my day every survey at the beginning just reading this stuff and laughing my ass off. I mean, you cannot imagine.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
If I would go back and do like a YouTube compilation of like the best comments.
Oh my gosh!
I'd love
I
to
have
see
like
those.
a very good idea of what Reddit balance looks like, and it's not pretty.
Oh my gosh, that's actually fantastic. That's what I like to go back and read the 1-star reviews for Runeterra. Oh man, on Apple. Oh,
similar vibe.
yeah,
Very similar.
It's so good. This game is so pay to win, Josh. You have no idea.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
They have all the cards they need every time. So we are hosting we've hosted some leagues and some tournaments before, but we're hosting our first like bigger tournament coming up. And quick shout out, thank you, Runeterra CCG sponsoring it, but on top of that, Optima, who's participating in the tournament, which is like, I want to throw some money toward the prize pool, and then the Casuals of Runeterra, another awesome podcast that goes over a ton of different stuff, including like the lore of all the cards and all that. They threw out some money for that as well, so I appreciate you guys for sponsoring it. But I'm going to be joining your co-host of the Fight Night EU, Scarzigs, to cast the top 8. It'll be my first casting experience. So can you give us some tips for casting, or what your go-to is for that?
I think it's weirdly not very like, it's not like a set process. When I cast, I don't think, oh, I should be doing this and like these steps. It's just kind of something that when I started off, I said before how I was never really into public speaking. Even university, when I was, an adult, I didn't enjoy presenting projects. Maybe because it was in Spanish and I speak it natively, but I'm not as comfortable as in English. Could be part of it.
Yeah.
But I never enjoyed public speaking. And when I got the chance to cast Gwent for the first time, I wanted to work in esports after I studied marketing and advertisement, and I thought I could link it somewhere. But casting is never something that was on my mind because I thought, this is not for me. But when it started off, it's just if you're passionate about a game, be it Gwent or now Runeterra, and you play it every day, so you know a lot about it and what play patterns to follow, and if you're good at analysis and explaining things, then it's something that's going to come, I think, naturally to you, especially if you do a podcast and you're comfortable with public speaking and YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's not really anything too difficult. As you do it more, you do get some better kind of internal feedback of when to be silent, when to not know. Maybe especially if it's a co-caster you've casted with a lot, their speaking patterns, when not to cut them off and how they tend to, speak their points and how long they tend to go on for. And it changes a lot with casters as well. But once you get that feel, which is something I think you can't really learn from just reading, steps and stuff. It's something you learn as you do it.
Right.
It becomes quite easy because it's just something that's natural. If you're passionate about the game and the knowledge is there, then it's just, and you enjoy competitive and seeing some of the best players in the world compete, and you can learn even from just watching them as you're casting, then it's pretty natural, something I enjoy a lot. So I can't give you like a set, these are the 5
That,
steps. If you
I feel
follow
comfortable
them,
now.
you'll be, but it should be quite natural, I think, especially for you if you're doing a podcast every day,
Don't
every
speak
week.
it in Spanish.
Yeah,
Don't cast in Spanish.
That's what I got.
That's the takeaway here. Spanish is fucked. Don't do Spanish. Just stick to English.
English, got it. I can do this. I was expecting just to, let Scarzigs do the heavy lifting. That's what my plan is, at least.
That could be a good one too. It's a backup plan. If things aren't going well, just mute yourself and let Skarsgård talk for a bit, and then come back in with like a few words here and there.
I like it. Yeah, but for real, I watch Fight Night EU more than NA, not for any preference other than the fact that I'm free during the wee hours. And we were talking about before the cast that for us it's the morning. I know for you it's like afternoon or so. But yeah, I know Scarzigs is up at like 7 for that. We were talking about when he came on the cast a couple weeks ago. But you two do an incredible job with that every week, so I appreciate it. No one else
Thank
does.
you.
I appreciate it. But I know there's a lot of people who do. Josh, you want to jump into that next question there?
Yes, we will move to the vast desert and Shurima Landing. Have you enjoyed the new expansion so far?
I have. I think it's on par with Rising Tides, with the Bilgewater region expansion, in terms of the mechanics and the concepts and the champions. But obviously, all of that has been a bit diluted in not having the balance changes.
Yeah.
Obviously, they see releasing all these new cards as a balance change because it will freshen up the meta and maybe it can make things more diverse and more. But clearly, wasn't the case. I think there definitely should have been a Band-Aid balance patch last week, but there wasn't one. So the desert is indeed very vast for the next 2 weeks. So it kind of really just dampened, I think, the entire expansion because it's not just so much like a bad matchup thing or like, Shurima as a region not having the right tools to counter Targon, whatever it is. It's just the power level. There's no decks that are on the power level of Targon mostly and TF Fizz. So regardless of what you play, if you queue up against either of these decks, even if you have in theory a good matchup, they're just playing with different rules and different value, and it's just impossible to really compete. So it feels terrible because you queue into these decks and you just know from the beginning that you're playing an unfair game from the start, I think.
Yeah. So for when Targon was released, we ran into kind of the same like lull where old decks were still dominating. I don't think they were dominating to the point of like TF Fizz or the Targon decks.
Yeah.
But do you think just because, Targon and TF Fizz are optimized so well, it honestly just creates this feeling like you can't do anything with Shurima, even though Shurima could be very strong. We just don't have the chance to optimize because these decks are so far ahead of them already.
I think even if you optimize, it's like TF Fizz has reached a level where there's so much synergy between all the cards, and like it really is crazy what it can do. Like, and the things that can do are things that you wouldn't think any deck can do, even if it's the strongest deck in the meta. Think about like in the past what the strongest decks in the meta were, like Heimer Vi with elusive turrets. Okay, it was maybe strong, but I mean, think about the level that it reached, the maximum, and now the maximum with Aphelios doing what Aphelios does is just insane. Like, it's uncomparable to anything in the game. And with TF is I think the same thing with TF especially is just insane. And card like stress testing and ballistic bot added to the game just made that deck. It just even if you optimize any list from any other regions, you're not going to compete against these powerhouse against Target and against TF specifically. It's not so much the optimization, it's more just power levels. Target has a lot of cards, and the way it plays as a region is just way stronger than anything else in the game, I think. Especially in Masters, where you're playing with people that are very, very skilled, the more decisions you give them to make in a game, the higher chance they have of slowly getting away from you. Yep. And where Target, you're making 17 decisions per turn. So, I mean, it's fucked.
Yeah, I mean, just the turn Aphelios comes down, you make 5 decisions right away. So. And it's really like 20 decisions inside of it. Yeah, it's been rough. I love Shurima as a region so far. It's been a lot of fun. I think they bring a lot of cool things to the game. But yeah, like you're saying, I mean, just with TF Fizz, like the interaction between every single one of the cards in that list has gotten to the point where it's just so fine tuned and perfect. And Ballistic Bot adding that extra freaking card that they can just discard or do whatever they need to, and then it's like, oh, TF levels in a turn. 2 turns maybe, but I had a game today. TF that took 3 turns to level. I was like, this is great. I have all day to do things. I was like, I can actually fight back. This is fantastic. But yeah, I really do hope that some of these cards get to shine a little bit more. And I totally agree. I wasn't as upset as most of the community last week with the balance patch. I was more upset that when Shurima released, we didn't get a balance patch like with that patch. I was really hoping, I know new cards are going to shake the meta up, but like it doesn't always work that way when some decks are so far ahead. So I was really hoping to get more balance then, and Aphelios taking 1 health off hasn't done a whole lot.
I think that was not the part that was a problem. It's the moon weapon. It's not the health.
Yeah.
That 1 point of health is not saving Aphelios most of the time.
No, it's not doing a whole lot. Yeah, so we'll talk about balance predictions, but I did want to talk about just what you're playing, and you recently had shared 2 different decks. So you shared Vlad Braum, and I know I think you took from Fresh Lobster to start with, and then made some tweaks, right?
Yeah.
So you think that's in a pretty good spot outside of obviously the couple decks that are far ahead.
I mean, it's definitely more playable than obviously the community thought initially. I think after this week and people, posting pretty good results with it, I think Sari won a tournament even with it.
Yeah.
It's a strong deck and has some very strong synergies. Maybe with Ice Shard and a few other cards, it's gotten stronger. But I even think that this deck 2 months ago was probably maybe a tier 2 or like a competitive deck.
Yeah.
Like maybe, I don't know, Sejuani Overwhelmed decks were. But because no one played them and no one put up the results and validated these decks as a possible contender for just not something that would be dominating the meta, but something that's playable in the meta.
Right.
They just never really got there, and they were seen as memes. And then someone's like, "Oh, it's not a meme anymore." And like, "Oh yeah, it isn't." All right, good, great. And Lobster was playing it, and he's a player that I think is obviously one of the best players in the world, I think, at Runeterra. And he was playing. He had good results with it. I wanted to play something new, and I'm always open to new lists especially lists that I see that have some proven, validity to like the results and everything.
Yeah.
So I got one from him. I kind of tweaked it a bit to kind of my play style and how I like to play and what I thought was better, and got to Diamond 1 pretty quickly. And then I played Spiders to end the climb, my classic go-to aggro deck.
The Spiders list is good. It's really legit.
It's always been good. I think it's like a sleeper deck at all times. It
Yeah.
has, I was telling you before, it has like a kind of a negative connotation because it's a beginner deck, but
Right.
it's really good synergy. It's really low to the ground. It's very consistent. There's no real bad draws. And it's very simple. Yes, I'm not going to say I'm a super skilled player for getting a good win rate with it, because it's mostly just matchup based. And if the moment that Trundle or any kind of Shadow Isles, Freljord, border clear deck isn't super meta, that's the green light. At any moment in this game's history, you can look 10 years from now, the moment that some champion on this, like say Lysandra gets nerfed this next balance patch, day 1 Spiders. Don't play anything else, because the moment that deck, that archetype doesn't exist in the meta, at least not in a very dominant, that's the green light. You have that green light. I had it 2 months ago when Trundle was first nerfed. When I got the health nerf, I started playing Spiders the day after, and I climbed like, I don't know, 300 LP in Masters that one day, because it's a very polarized deck that can win very easily and very quickly. So it's great for laddering.
Yeah, and it's quick games, like you said, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, Spiders are awesome, man. I absolutely love that list. That list is super, super fun. The one thing they need to fix with the Vlad Braum deck is the freaking Bloodletter.
Yes.
Pinging Braum and the Poro. I hate that so much.
It's a feature. I'm not.
It's a feature.
Someone tells me I'm bug abusing. I'm like, listen.
I'm playing Vlad.
How can this be a bug? I mean, it's a bit weird, but I don't really know what the devs are thinking with this interaction.
Yeah.
From what I've read, it happens because the Poro coming out from Braum is not a separate unit. It's coded as like a buff. So it's seen differently from the Bloodletter's perspective, and it just hits both at the same time because it is simultaneous. For every other summon unit like House Spider, it doesn't hit both because one comes in before the other. But with Braum, it's like a buff, so it's like at the same time kind of thing. And maybe it's a bug. We'll see. They didn't change in the patch notes though.
They did it. I know. I was shocked.
That's my green light to say, okay, this deck's I'm not using anything here.
Yeah.
Have you guys had it happen where a visual bug comes with it also? Does that happen every single time?
Every time.
Yeah, okay.
That's the part where you're like, all right, maybe it's a bug. If that wouldn't happen, I would be like, all right, there's not even an argument. But with the visual bug, maybe there's something going on there that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that bug at all, and then yesterday 2 games in a row it happened on turn 4, and I was like, are you serious? It's like once you have like the interactions, like move it around in your bench, it goes away. So if you just move it a little bit, I think the same with item negation the first like week. If you like Oracle Eye, it would like fix it. The first time I'm like, is this like some kind of flavor thing where it just like actually like leaves it like hanging there? I'm like, no, surely this has to be a bug, right? I thought maybe it was like some kind of like stasis in time kind of thing, where it's like just
Yeah, it's just sitting there to remind you of your spell that got canceled.
like 3 turns ago.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That bug, man, that one ticked me off more than anything. The right negation was so annoying.
Mhm.
But now, like, Josh, I think didn't you just lose a game to Braun? Not lose, but like really lost a lot of tempo because freaking
Yeah, that's what
Bloodletter is a 3-4.
2 games in a row. 2 games in a row at 3-4, and I couldn't trade because
Dude.
like I couldn't trade favorably, and I was like,
He's ripped, man. If they had Scargrounds out, it's over, dude. It's over. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, in a meta that's fair. So right now, there's a lot of fair decks, but anything targeting is not, in my opinion, it's not fair, and then like TF
Right.
is even. But in a fair meta, Braum Vlad is a very strong deck because it has great synergies. It has really insane value if things go well and you get the right synergies going. And it's, I mean, huge bodies on the board, especially, and now like especially Ruination, like a lot of like huge board clears aren't really meta right now. So a lot of decks that if Ruination was meta in Lysandra Trundle, you cannot play Braum Vlad because Ruination just ends your game. Like it instantly play on curve, and same with overwhelm units with like Sejuani and Tryndamere decks.
Yeah.
But if it's not meta, then the meta is fair, then it's actually a very strong deck, I think.
Yeah, I'm really happy they've both found the deck. I mean, both those champions saw significant changes throughout. So I think those are some of the highlights of, buffing that worked well, and then, slight nerfing back when Braum was absolutely bonkers for like a week.
Yeah. Like a month.
Yeah, it was a long month. He was super legit.
I can sense some PTSD in that. It was a month. I was like, it wasn't a fucking week.
It was an entire month. Oh my gosh, dude, he really did devastate the meta for a while. Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this?
Every game, just Braum and Nivea, like get out of here.
All right, so we're going to spend the rest of the time here discussing some possible nerfs. We always try to do this before the patch day comes. Just try to. It can be a prediction, but it could also just be more of a conversation of what we think needs to change first. There's a lot of big things in the meta, so I guess let's just start with the elephant in the room, which I would assume, and a lot of people say Targon. I think the elephant in the room is TF Fizz. So how do you start by changing TF Fizz?
I think TF is maybe the strongest deck in the game now, but its balance issues are more just the card synergies and the certain cards being very strong. If you change a few cards, it'll be fine. Whereas I think the bigger problem is Targon, but I guess we'll get to that from a bigger standpoint because it's a whole region that seems to be very problematic. With TF I think obviously TF is a problem, just the way it can level up now. And if you're going to add more cards that make it, because TF hasn't changed, just the cards around it that have changed.
Right.
And you're not, obviously the TF now is a lot stronger because of those cards. So if you're going to add those cards, it's you have to either remove those cards, which I think is not going to happen. I think stress testing and the discard package exists in like discard aggro, for example. You change Porocan, you change some of those cards, you're going to change, or other archetypes and maybe a whole like PNZ region, which is already very weak at some point. Now it's a bit better, but it still has a lot of problems. So I think the biggest thing is TF, obviously. Something has to be changed there. I think one of the bigger things that people were mentioning was changing from 8 cards drawn to 16 cards, like playing and drawn, but it's hard to say balance changes this out of the blue, I think, especially for TF, which is a champion that's not very just stat based. It's more abstract than that, I think. So it's hard without playtesting and knowing how these changes affect the game, not just TF himself, but how TF works in the environment of the rest of his deck and in the meta itself as well. Yeah. I think it's hard to have like a clear cut, this is the best balance change you can make, and that's why devs, they have a hard job and it's going to fuck it up, but it's normal, I think. Yeah. When they get it right, I'm also very impressed because it's hard to do card game balancing when it's so many cards, huge card pools, and also just so many changes all the time to keep it fresh. I think is really impressive. And until now, they've done a great job. I think I'm with Runeterra as a whole, I'm super impressed. But this last lack of balance is a problem, of course, and we'll see going forward. But TF is for sure. In TF is the number one problem. Burblefish is also a problem. Yeah. I saw an interesting nerf, which is making it, maybe it's like a band-aid nerf because it might still be a problem if someone breaks it, but changing the cost from 6, the initial cost, to 9. It also fixes the timeline issue with Ledros and the Dreadway a bit as well, because there's one more unit in that pool. And timeline is a card that I don't think should be nerfed. I think it's a really cool card. Just touching on that briefly. Yeah. And as more units get added and more cards get added to the pool, then that combo with Ledros and Dreadway becomes worse and worse. So it should fix itself over time. And changing the card itself now would be too rash of a decision, I think. So changing Burblefish to 9, maybe it won't be enough because maybe you have to change to 9 and not let it cost less than 1. I think that might be a possibility. because you can't change the card advantage aspect like that. That I think is part of the identity with Bilgewater and the other attune cards that give you 1-cost cards or 1 mana cards from your regions. And you can't change the mana reduction because that just changes the whole aspect of the card. You can't use the elusive because that's part of the Bilgewater laws, like this elusive fish tribal synergy with like the other cards that no one plays, like the slippery wave rider and
That card's
You
amazing.
know the names though.
Oh, that was a close one though. I was like, I could have said I don't know, like something a bit different. So I think that would be an interesting change as well. Just making it 9, kind of 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, I like that.
That's the first time I heard that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I heard a lot of can't cost more than 1. I haven't heard 9 yet.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Twitter and Reddit. This is not. I've seen these different content. I'm like mixing them together, but this is definitely not my own brain thinking of these.
Yeah.
Ballistic Bot is very strong as well, but I think it's fine for some regions to have cards that are very strong. I think Ballistic Bot is a card that PNZ really needed.
I agree,
And it created so many archetypes now. The Teemo version with Sejuani and Ezreal is fine. You have a discard spell, Ignition you can discard. You can put him in Burn even. He was played in like PNZ Noxus Burn when it came out as well. I think it's just a great card for the game in general. If it's a bit stronger than it should be, okay, so be it. You can maybe change the stats maybe to 0 attack and just make it so you have to play that first ignition to get attack maybe change the health to 2 because the health isn't really as relevant anyway. But overall, how it works, I think, is fine. And I think those are the 3 strongest cards. Maybe pick a card. Depending on how you change TF, you might have to change pick a card. Or not make pick a card the signature spell for TF. That's also a big one, I think, that would help a lot in not making it as OP.
Yeah, we saw them change champion spells when they switched up Lee Sin, so that's definitely an option there. Yeah, I agree. I think 100%. The most important thing is TF's problem is not his stats. You can't really just change a number to fix him, a number on his cost, health, or power.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Aphelios already, right? Changing 1 health didn't really do anything. So, yeah, he's not one that can be changed that way. And I totally agree. I really hope Ballistic Bot doesn't get changed. You just mentioned all those archetypes that opened up. I also played him with a ton of Plunder, a ton of Victor decks. Like he's just such a great card for the game, and I think changing his health or his attack down to 0 or something like minor like that, totally fine. I just don't want to see him like get nuked to a 3-cost or anything. Yeah, TF. I saw the 16 cards being played one going around, being played or drawn. That's interesting. Like you said, it definitely requires a little bit more play testing to see if that actually functions properly or not, depending. Yeah, I could see possibly them just saying, all right, it takes 10 to level them up now. I could see them just kind of going like with that because I feel like that's just simple and easy. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't even know if it's going to be enough. But I could see that. Josh, what do you think about TF?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I stand. I'm not sure if his Panda made some really good points. Do you change TF or do you change the followers? If you change the followers, you hurt a lot of archetypes. If you change TF, it could help that deck, but the synergies are still there for the deck. So I think they both need some type of change. So I think TF, I don't know how you change it. I don't know if you just increase his level condition, if you increase his cost, or if just changing his spell will be strong enough. Like if you just change his spell around to, I don't know if pick a card. That's just the first thing that came to my not pick a card. Pocket Aces. That's the first card that came to my mind. I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't really go with TF's play style, so it kind of takes away synergy. Somewhat.
I mean, it gives him a bit more survivability. So maybe
that's true.
It's not like completely out of left field. It's not like it's like a jettison suddenly.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that would be a bit. That would be a good nerf. Just make jettisons and you just play some random in your deck when you're playing. You're burning your mind melt. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, it actually puts you on a timer. Actually, you're drawing cards and burning cards.
Pocket Aces works. That's actually pretty good. I mean, it fits the theme. It's all that. It's not.
I guess just because it's a card, that's the only reason that it came to my mind.
Yeah,
but I think 100% Burble needs to be hit. 100% that card is bonkers. Just because of Burble and Iterative just being a thing, that combo needs to be tuned down somehow. Because I was making really crappy decks and discovered that combo, and then like literally 2 weeks later, it was like Tia Fizz was everywhere, and I was like, wow, I guess I didn't get the full strength of that, but now people are just abusing it to no end. So I think that if there's one card that needs to be changed, it is definitely the Burblefish.
I think when it came out, it wasn't considered like this super OP
No.
card. I was playing it in Go Hard. I miss kind of the whole. Most of the times when decks are really good, I don't play them because I just don't find enjoyment in doing what everyone's doing, and I don't find, even if I get good results, like okay, the deck's broken, so
You fit in here
whatever.
very
Like,
well.
Yes, you do.
like I like playing competitive decks,
Yeah.
but like the fringe competitive decks are the ones that you kind of think are good, but maybe aren't as the play rate isn't there yet. And I like getting decks and maybe making them more popular as well, kind of like with Brown Vlad and Spiders
Right.
and decks that I think are good but not played enough. So I played Go Hard a bit near pretty much the end of its cycle. So when this expansion with Burblefish and Ballistic Ball came out, that's when I started playing, which is already like 2 months after it was big and everything, and right before the actual nerf. And I played Burblefish in the Go Hard deck. That's one of the reasons I wanted to play Go Hard, just to learn the deck a bit, and also play Burblefish.
Yeah.
And I could tell that this card was going to be broken, either in this meta or maybe the next one. But this is a card that is waiting to deck build around it, and then you break it because it's just it's a 0, it's elusive. You can copy with iterative. So and I think I tweeted about it, and I mentioned in the surveys where it didn't get. I think it got like a 3.6 when the survey came out like 2 weeks later.
Okay.
And it was starting to gain traction. And I mentioned like, guys, watch out for this card. I guarantee you, in 2 months or 3 months' time, it'll be in the top 5 and definitely above a 4, which is when it's considered like it needs a nerf.
Yeah.
And that's 100% going to be the case for this next survey that I'm posting tomorrow, actually. So,
oh, nice.
Natural plug right there. It'll be on Reddit.
Yes.
You guys will see it. But I guarantee the results for that. Burblefish will be in the top 5.
Oh yeah.
Most problematic cards in the game. And
Yeah.
it hasn't changed. It's the same card. Just
Yep.
they've optimized how to break the card, and there we go. That's what we have now. What TF is.
Yeah, that's one of the one stories I always bring up because we got to talk to Sean Main, the guy who designed Call of the Mountain, 3 times actually. So every time a new cards came out, we got to talk to him about those, and like we had him on the day of release for each of those. And the day of release, the attitude toward Burblefish that day was like, this card's garbage, and I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like, what are we talking about? And he was like, yeah, he's really good. He really likes the cost of being 0. Like once you get him to 0, things get a little crazy. And I'm like, right, yeah, he's gonna be nuts at some point. And yeah, it just became just a matter of time until he was bonkers. I feel like that was probably I would have loved to see like survey results from like day 1 of that, because that was like the biggest flop. It was trash tier like all the other elusive fish other than Zap, I guess. And then yes, Burblefish is our one true savior. But yeah, Burblefish is absolutely bonkers.
I actually do when the cards get released. I didn't do it for this last expansion because I was just slow on time, and I just didn't have the time. But I started doing it with target expansions, like a prediction survey for the cards before the game they're actually released. Once they're all leaked or announced on Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and right before the actual patch where the card releases, I made a survey a few times now, asking people to predict how strong they think these cards will be. And it's always fun to look back now, like 4 months later, 5 months later, and see the results, because some broken cards you can tell they're broken, but other ones that are maybe harder to see that they're broken without playing them, they were very low rated, and maybe Burblefish was also one of them. I think I'll have to check that later, but definitely the case. I think it's a card that doesn't seem so flashy, but once you break it, then it becomes super, super strong.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so are we good with Targon? Oh, I'm sorry, not Targon. TF is. I feel like we narrowed it down. Don't touch Ballistic Bot. Please touch Burble and TF. Don't touch Fizz either, right? I mean, Fizz finally has a
Fizz is completely fine.
Yeah,
Fizz
just
it hasn't changed. I mean, these are cards that had like Mind Meld. Someone will say, "Oh, Mind Meld needs to be nerfed." I'm like, no, sir. Mind Meld has been the same card for the past year. No one played it, but now because you have all the other broken cards, that makes it business to play it. But you should definitely not nerf Mind Meld.
No.
There's like very clear answers to what the problems are, I think.
Yes, I hope that's what we see, and I'm expecting it. The bigger question, like you said, was Targon for sure. So, in your opinion, Panda, what are like the top 2, 3? Not even problem cards, but just problems in general. If it's the invoke package, if it's the lifesteal or the healing, what are the big problems with Targon?
Oh, I think the invoke package is a problem. Just all of it. The way it plays out. I mean, because some people don't notice this, but when you're playing like Slayer Priestess, whatever it is, the card you invoke, it's the card that you're drawing a card also. So this is a card that Targon has never had a problem with card advantage, even though it doesn't have these crazy draw spells. And you don't even build thinking, oh, I have to get more draw spells. No, because all your cards are drawing already. And having a chump blocker turn 3 with the Slayer Priestess is fine for what it does, and then you get a card that's really broken for the late game. And it had some problems at the beginning, maybe with not having sustainability to make it to the late game, but with star shaping, and now with Temple, it's just every expansion that came out, it got worse and worse and worse. And it's not that it's super strong, which it is, but it's also just not fun to play against, especially with Aphelios now and the way it's dragged games down, and you have so much sustainability, but also so much versatility. It's a regions should have weaknesses. There should be regions that don't have workers. There should be regions that don't have deny spells. There should be regions that, and that's how matchups are created. And you have bad matchups because your region can answer this region's. And that's why you combine certain regions with one that has other strengths, so you have a more balanced. But Targon doesn't need it to combine with anything else. I mean, you just have the Invoke package, and the Invoke package gives you a silence, gives you a stun, gives you literally anything you want in the game. And you have so many chances to invoke with Zoe and Tracy Sketcher, etc., that it has no weaknesses. It has no clear problems with the region. It does too much, too well, and that's the biggest problem. It's a design problem for the entire thing. And then obviously cards like Hush, etc., they're just, I mean, very, very strong. And Temple especially, I think, as well, has to be nerfed. But that's the biggest thing. It's very strong, but also very unfun to play against because they have the answers to everything, no matter the matchup, and also because games take so long. And that's a super important thing as well. When I was casting Fight Nights recently, these past few weeks, Lobster, very good player, but takes time to, and that's a good thing. That's, I think, maybe why he's a good player, because he really thinks about all his decisions and ropes. But when he's playing TF Aphelios, that tournament lasted on average like 3 or 4 hours longer than the usual times for Fight Nights because of Targon as a region. That's bad in an esports setting. That's bad in a ladder setting when you're playing hour-long games of a card game. It can exist in a card game in 2021 when the attention span of people is so short. They're on mobile. They're playing quick games. This is not Dota 2. This is not League of Legends. This is a card game. It should last 10 to 15 minutes maximum. It can't last more than that, or else something's wrong with the game. So Targon, just from that standpoint, is already fucking something up in the game. And it's unfun to play against. For casuals, for content creators, for pro players. Maybe not for pro players because they can kind of abuse. They're so good that they can kind of, Targon gives them all the tools to have huge win rates and be very dominant. But for most 99% of players, it's not going to be fun, I think, going forward.
That's fine. I'm just realizing I put Targon and then Temple as a separate point. So yeah, Temple definitely needs to be touched on, no doubt. But yeah, you're right. I mean, game length is absurd. The one card that I was, I went in like really early one set. I normally don't go in like super early with predictions, but I was like, it was like a week into Targon, and I was like, star shaping will be changed at some point, and it still hasn't. And I still think that is a huge one to be changed. And I mean, that touches both on the game length point because it's heal 5 for 5, and it touches on the invoke point. So I am thinking star shaping might finally get something touched upon it. I don't know. The invoke package is like near and dear to my heart as well. Like I love the invoke package, and Junkbrush in chat is making a good point too of comparing that to really the predict package that's coming out, where predict isn't just card advantage for the sake of being card advantage, right? You're just getting cards out of nowhere, and you're getting specific answers for things. But predict is more kind of what Aphelios did a little bit, but just kind of having to plan out future turns. Between those two mechanics, do you feel like there's similarities, and do you like one more than the other for any reason?
Yeah, predict is a nice mechanic, and you can build certain decks around it, and it's a new. I'm always impressed, every time a new expansion comes out in a new region, and they add new flavors and themes that work with the champions and that region in League of Legends, from the limited knowledge I have of the league, like lore and regions and stuff. And they make keywords that continue to, maybe there's a predict keyword in other card games, sure, but still they continue to innovate with deep, etc., with new keywords and new mechanics, and constantly adding new archetypes that I think is super impressive just from a conceptual standpoint from the dev team. And predict is a keyword that it's neat. In certain decks where it matters, it's going to feel good, but you're never going to feel dirty playing. It's not going to feel unfair, and you can tell right away this is not broken. You're just predicting, and you even have to think, is this actually good? Is this actually valuable? Are these units good? They're kind of vanilla units with this extra thing, and gives you some thought. But with Invoke, it doesn't. You feel like something's. I mean, I think that what they thought, the devs, was that okay, you're playing this for 3 mana. There's 1/2, which is a bad stat line. Yeah. And you're getting this card, and the celestial pool of cards is better than average because you're paying this upfront cost of low tempo, of whatever it is. But the trade-off isn't enough for how much better than average these cards are. Like, especially the lower. I think a lot of people think about like Invoke and they go to the flashy like big mana cards, but the lower spectrum Equinox is a card that just against like swaying with Leviathan, they just from turn one, they're playing Zoe, they're attacking your Nexus, they have super cool star chart, they're the place basic catcher, and you already know your entire game plan is fucked by a 1 mana card that they just pulled out of nowhere. And you turn one, okay, that's fucking Equinox. I'm sure of it. Turn 8 comes, you play Leviathan, they play Equinox, and that's it. The game's over with a 1 mana card. Like, it does not make any sense. I don't know why Equinox doesn't do it for only 1 round. It should be a 1 round thing. I don't think it should be eternally. Like, it's just so strong with effect, especially now as more very strong followers get added. It doesn't make sense. Either it should have like a cap on follower mana where it can only silence followers 3 mana or below, which I think maybe makes sense, like Frostbite in a way.
I like that.
Or maybe 1 round only, but you can't silence a unit for the entire game for 1 mana. It's crazy, I think.
So do you think fixing the Invoke package comes to fixing Invoke as a mechanic? So like changing how that card works, like maybe instead of, just getting a card, you actually have to transform a card in your deck to that? Or do you think changing the Celestial cards themselves is the fix to it? So like changing the mechanic or changing the cards in the Invoke package?
I think for some cards, it might be the cards because they're just, Golden Scissor, for example, is very, very strong. As just, if you think about a 6-drop and you can put into your deck in Deck Builder, it's, 2 bodies, one with Lifesteal, one with Elusive, like the 2 most broken keywords in Runeterra probably, or some of the strongest ones that really matter in every single game, no matter the matchup. Elusive is always good, Lifesteal is always good in most cases. Equinox is a big one. Crescent Strike is a big one. Not sure how you would nerf them because the fact that all the spells are slow speed, for example, is nice. If they were fast speed, then I think I would have quit the game when Tartan came out. But it's hard to tell unless you play test what's broken and what's fine and how to do it and how to fix it exactly. I think the devs are the ones that have to come up with these answers. That's why they get paid to balance the game. And it is a hard job. I've said it before. I'm always very impressed when you do things right. And I'm never the one to go on Twitter and start immediately bashing devs and calling people out and all this when something goes even slightly wrong, because the general landscape of balance in Runeterra has been very, very, very positive from other card games I've seen. Just really, really good. And just they show competence, which is something that sadly is missing in many card games and just esports and just interactions I've had the past few years in general. But it is hard to balance. I'm not sure how to do it exactly with Invoke. I'm not sure if the thing that's overlooked a lot, I mentioned before, is the card advantage aspect where you just have the card immediately. That's something that's not obvious. I think it's not as intuitive for people to understand as it being very strong, but it's a very strong part of the Invoke thing where you just have the card in your hand, then you get card advantage, you get a very strong option, and most of the time the choosing between certain cards, the pool is still relatively small. Maybe if they add more cards that aren't so good, then that helps as well.
I was going to ask if you thought diluting the Celestial package, was, I wouldn't say the lazy way out, but making stuff that might be understated, like maybe making it very circumstantial might even be worse if you dilute it with those cards.
Then when you get the right pull, then it feels like a high roll, which is not a good thing either, because you don't want that much variance where there's like really, really bad cards and really, really good cards. So maybe it's just trying to make everything go more to the middle. Which, there's certain cards like, I don't know, the 4/1 Overwhelm that never feels like, oh no, they got the charger on me, I lost the game. Like they get in like, all right, well, nice pull, but it's fine, I'll just trade with this. Or they get the 3/3 Elusive, maybe kind of sucks, but not the end of the world. But there's certain cards that obviously, either because of the matchup's very polarized or for whatever it is, they feel very, very overtuned and too strong. And like if you get Equinox or you get Crescent Strike, then you just immediately pick it. And the same with some of the higher cost ones as well. But maybe making everything a bit more, not as overtuned, maybe a bit more balanced, and maybe not appealing. Maybe you don't get Equinox every time or Crescent Strike every time. You get Crescent Strike, maybe it's 4 mana, and it's maybe not the best play to make, but when you're in a matchup where you really need to stun something, then you get it no matter what. You don't care if it costs 5 mana, you're still going to play because you need to stun this very important unit like Lee Sin, whatever it is, at a certain point. So it makes it more matchup dependent, where it's only good in this matchup, or and you pick the card that's best for that matchup, and it makes it. I think that's how it should be. Right now, you're just getting the broken card every time because it's broken and because it just on paper just gives you a lot of value, not because of the matchup itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Equinox is absolutely bonkers. I do like the change of it being able, I understand maybe just silence for a turn is probably strong enough for a one cost unit. But also, the ability to actually only silence things permanently maybe, but that are 3 cost or less is a solid fix as well. I mean, it sucks. Like my Prankster got silenced by that today. It's like, all right, yeah, that sucks. But I'm playing a 3 cost unit who's an 0/3. Like it dies a lot from challenge or whatever. But shutting down Leviathan is the opposite end extreme case of, okay, here's my 8 mana gone like completely, and I feel like Targon just showed how ridiculous silence is between Hush, between Equinox, right? I mean, and I think they underestimated that ability in general for sure. It's one of the strongest mechanics in the game, and it was the first Hush that came out was obnoxious. Like Hush now is solid.
The game is very well balanced, but
Yeah.
I think about some cards and I think, and it happens in many card games where it's like everything, good, okay, maybe understandable, it's a bit strong, okay, and then it's like, wait a minute, did someone just, I don't know, fall asleep with their keyboard and create this by accident, and then they're like, all right, just put it in. Like, I'm not sure what the placing happens to allow that card to come into the game. And some cards in the past have been also equally broken.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a problematic card in any matchup as well. Hush is always going to find value. So it got nerfed twice already. I'm not sure if it's going to get nerfed again, but it'll always be a strong card. And some of these cards, because Targon's going to be a strong region, then you just can't play certain archetypes or decks because you know that the moment you tune to Targon, the game's over because they have these super polarized answers.
Yeah.
And like you can't play, I don't know, anything with Battle Fury, like any kind of huge buff effects because Targon exists, and Hush just immediately destroys your game plan. Or certain like buff archetype, whatever it is. So having these very versatile answers be so strong in any matchup is a problem, and especially in the matchup where they're polarized answers, then it really kills a lot of diversity, I think, in what you can queue up in ladder.
It does for sure. I think my favorite thing you said there out of everything was yes, and just to add to it a little bit was, like the devs have been extremely competent in the past. I think one of their best attributes is their communication. Like they just listen very well to like the current balance cycle is off, and we've talked about it before last week and other weeks that there is less balance in the game right now since seasonals came out, and I think they're seeing that it's not working as great as they thought it was, but they're always listening, always watching, so it's always great to be able to actually communicate that with them back and forth. So I do think they see a lot of these problems that are coming up, and I do think there's going to be some serious fixes. I think we're going to have a pretty large balance patch. And I don't want to go on Twitter if it's not a big balance patch because it's going to be a nightmare.
I mean, there has to be. I think at this point, especially with card games where communities nowadays are so demanding, so like the value of having a gamer's attention or just a consumer's attention is so high because there's so much offered in gaming and I think any industry. And people have gotten so demanding, so spoiled even, I think, with I mean, you see it on Twitter with people being extremely aggressive or offensive to devs and like demanding. This is a free game. I mean, you can pay for cosmetic. This is a free fucking game. Like, sure, you can complain a bit, but I mean, this is a very good game and it's very fun. And I mean, I think you have to have the right perspective always with balance and with card games in general. And card games I think Runeterra is a pretty good community overall from my experience, especially in the pro players and people that create content and are very involved with the game and everything. I think there's a lot of just great positive interactions, but there's always going to be some negative stuff on Twitter especially. But I think next week there's definitely going to be a major balance patch because I mean the temperature's rising, and at some point if there isn't one, it's going to blow up. It's not going to be a good result for anyone, I think.
So we'll end with one last question here. We had some other cards written down. Like you touched on timelines, that you like timelines. Atrocity, and Skarzig's made a whole video on Atrocity. Josh hates Atrocity more than anything.
I hate Atrocity.
So I understand. But something we like to do is try to predict a buff. And it comes from our third co-host, Mikey. He randomly predicted that Laurent Chevalier was going to get buffed like way before it was, and like out of nowhere. Like he didn't prepare for the show at all, and we're like, what's going to get buffed? He was like Laurent Chevalier, and then of course Laurent Chevalier got buffed. So do you have a guess on a card that's going to get buffed? Josh, if you have one, you can jump in too.
If I had to guess, like a non-mainstream card that would get buffed,
I mean, it could be mainstream. Like, I'll just go Lulu. Like, I feel like it's time. It's time for Lulu. And maybe it'll be one of her support cards, but she needs something.
The problem is I'm not sure if this balance patch is going to be. I mean, it can't be so many change. And there's a problem as well with balance where people maybe don't understand this. I mean, I think a lot of people really go like very focused on like balance and not the bigger picture. I think you can't have like 50 balance like changes in one patch just because casual players can't keep up with the changes, and there's a lot of card games in the past have had issues where they change a ton of cards and then the game just feels foreign to casual players, and it's a problem from the player base and the play rate of players, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not sure if this patch will be like a major like buffing Ionia patch, because Ionia definitely needs it at some point. But I think it might be maybe like the next big one. This one's gonna be more like just fixing everything that's broken and maybe like some kind of like target rework in some way or Aphelios. But
I like that.
So I'm not sure how many like actual random buffs there will be. I hope
they always throw
in
a couple. They always throw in a couple random ones that no one's expecting.
Like one or two nonsense.
Maybe that's true.
Yeah, that's
I think what archetypes are a bit. Maybe Deep is a bit. I'm not sure what you exactly can buff, but Deep does feel a bit underwhelming right now. I don't know why they nerfed Drag Dredgers.
That's what I was going to bring up. There's a movement forming for Dredge Dredgers to be back.
I'm a day one Deep player. I started really playing when it came out. That was one of my funnest times in Runeterra, and Deep was a very competitive deck. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't an oppressive deck. It was like high tier 2, maybe not even tier 1.
Yeah.
Drag Dredgers gets nerfed. I'm like, wait, out of left field. I'm like, was this necessary? Like, and maybe it gets reverted. I mean, I don't know why that nerf ever happened, and never felt like a super strong card. If you're gonna nerf it, don't nerf the 2/1 style. That's a huge change in attack. I can't trade with anything now.
Yeah, well, they claimed they got it like had unfair trade value, but then they released the Dune Keeper at a 2/1 that also summons a 1/1. It's like, okay.
Dredgers was fine, guys. Yeah, like you said, it was like a tier 2 deck. All right, so Dredgers is a good answer. You're definitely right. It's not. I even like the answer if there's going to be no buffs. Like, this is going to be the first patch where it's just all freaking Targon and TF Fizz nerfs. I could see it. I don't know. I'll hold out hope for Lulu one day.
If something gets buffed, it's going to be Ionia, though, because Ionia is in a bad spot right now. Yep. So
it's going to be the monastery.
As long as they don't bring Karma back, because like they nerf Targon to like help game time and all that stuff, and they buff Karma, and it goes right back to being ridiculous stall games.
So my prediction is that not this patch, but the next one after this, there will be an Ionia major overhaul, and Karma will be reworked.
I like it. I could see the rework. Yeah, I think it needs to be that instead of just let's make her 5 cost again or whatever. She needs some other touch up there. All right, so we are going to actually, we'll add this GMO lore. This will be the last conversation here, because I really want Fiora to get touched in this upcoming patch. I don't think I'm in the majority. I'm not sure. I've seen really varying opinions. Panda, what are your thoughts on, I guess, if Fiora deserves a nerf first off, and what would it be?
I think it's very hard to nerf Fiora because she's a 3-mana 3/3 that has Challenger. Yeah. You can't change that. You can maybe change the kills for her Fiora win condition to 5. I don't think anyone would be complaining too much. It's usually in a matchup where you're going to get that win condition, you're going to get anyway at 5 because you're killing spiders, you're killing some small stuff, or your game plan is centered around protecting Fiora. That change is not going to be massive. But these are small changes that add up to lowering win rate a bit and making things a bit less oppressive. I think the bigger problem is the cards around it. Brightsteel Protector is a pretty underrated and untalked about card. Yeah. One of in my list of like top 5 cards that aren't complained as much as they should be, I think that's one of them. 3/2, give a barrier to something that's for 2 mana is very, very strong. Yeah. Like if you're thinking about it's already a vanilla strong stat line for a 2-cost unit, 3/2 or 2/3, either way, 3/2 is probably better. Giving a barrier, that's in theory a 3 mana cost with like prismatic barrier, and the other cards I give it for less, but it's still a very, very strong ability, and that is in Fiora. I think it's the card in Fiora Shen that has the highest win rate on Mobilytics if you look at it by cards. And like whoever take that out of the deck, then the deck just doesn't work as much. It's just great value. So I think it's maybe more the cards around Fiora that are maybe problematic. Fiora and Shen aren't problems. I think it's more Brightsteel Protector maybe. Aegis, Golden Aegis might become more of a problem in the future, I think, as well. Yeah, it's a 1 mana barrier. Adding to Pursuit just 1 mana more and having a barrier is maybe very strong. Yep. But I think you can't really change Fiora. It's very hard to nerf her unless you rework her completely.
Do you think even if she was reworked, that deck would just find another slot for Fiora, or do you think, Fiora is somewhat of the engine of that deck?
Talking about
Because we've
Sword
I
seen
think
it.
I think
So,
just the way that works with combat tricks, and combat tricks are extremely strong in Runeterra, because the swings they get you in tempo and in board
Mhm.
control is massive, and it's just the deck that really abuses that the best. That
agreed.
Ash Frostbite for the same reasons. The Frostbite package is also, it's not overpowered. It's not something that should be nerfed or anything, but it's also something that's definitely not talked about as much as it should be. In the right deck, like Ash Noxus is, in the right meta, that deck is very, very strong, because no one can win the board against it, because combat tricks are so strong, and Brittle Steel for 1 mana, and etc. It swings the game completely in their favor. Same with Fiora Shen. They just do it more consistently, I think, with things like River Shaper and for me, it feels terrible to play against. Like, you're on attack token turn 7. They have 10 mana to work with. What do? I mean, they have answers to everything. Whatever you do, they're going to punish you for it. So that's where the problem. It's not the units, it's not the stat line. It's more just the combat tricks being so strong and being so efficient in the way that deck works.
Yeah, I've been. I guess it was like last week. I was like, I don't know what they would do or what they could do, but that deck has literally sat in the meta since like Shen got his attack buff, right? Which was months and months and months ago, and it's just been sitting there, tier 2, tier 1, tier 1, tier 2, tier 1, and I just want to see something, maybe to just change the deck up a little bit, at least give it a room for something else to be there. Now, like Golden Ages got put in there, or even some Cataclysms if people are feeling fancy, but uh, I just want to see something so that that deck or that archetype can actually have like some other variation.
As someone who's been casting for like the past year, believe me, if there's anyone that I have a personal vendetta against the deck and playing against it, so imagine that plus having to cast it every single tournament. There's 3 players bringing it. It's not fun, I think, but that's maybe more personal. I think you can, instead of taking things away and nerfing it a little bit here and there, it just got more and more cards every expansion that fit in the deck, like Sharpsight.
Sharpsight's a big one.
Maybe not broken, maybe not, doesn't have to be immediately nerfed. Maybe it can be nerfed, because the blocking elusive is a big upside, and the +2/+2 is very high upside for a 2-mana spell.
For sure.
Burst speed especially. So maybe you can change that stat line a bit, like +1/+2 or +2/+1, and then still have the elusive theme around it. But as all these cards got added, they just made the deck, Screeching Dragon as well, like slightly better and better and better and better, and then you're going the wrong way. It should be going down a little bit. Look at the play rate and stuff. So I think just some minor changes. Maybe Bryce the Protector going to like 2/2 instead of 3/2. Maybe some other just minor stuff can make the deck strong and still a viable archetype, a good skill testing like mid-range type archetype, but not as oppressive as it is now.
I like that a lot. I do think Bright Steel, I never really thought about how much value is there for sure. On top of that, just changing cards around Fiora is like a really solid idea, just to simmer her down. The only change I've heard to Fiora that I like, and I don't like a numbers change at all. I don't think that's warranted. Jeff Hoagland had always had the idea of, all right, make Fiora deal like 15 Nexus damage or something when she does it. So instead of it just insta-winning the game, deal X amount of Nexus damage. So you might be able to live if you have just a little bit of health left, say they didn't get pressure. And I've always kind of been like that idea. I do think that's a little bit of a harder route to go. And now that, I'm sold with what Panda said, just maybe, put Sharpsight to a +2/+1 and make the Bright Steel a 2/2. Give him the War Chef's treatment. Change his stats 4 times.
I would still just add it, like make it 5 counters then instead. I think because that changes the flavor of it a bit as well. Like the dueling aspect of Fiora and all this, and that's something that devs really do very well as well. Like making flavor work with balance. It's incredible the shit they come up with, because everything fits so well for most of these champions, and that really fits well with Fiora, I think.
That's a big one that we didn't mention. You could just up or counter. That's one number change that would actually significantly.
Against aggro decks especially, it's always like that last. Like when I play spiders against Fiora, I can't put more than 4 units on the board in the game. I have to think like, what are the most effective 4 units I can put on the board in these, or 3 units I can put on the board in the first 3 turns, and then I have to just find decimates, because that's the only way to win against like mono Fiora.
Yep, that's very true. Well, Panda, we really appreciate you jumping on here. I want to give you a second, if you can tell everyone who's listening, where to find you if they haven't already. And also, please plug the survey and Fight Night and all that as well.
I will be casting every Friday for Giant Slayer on the Fight Night EU tournaments, starting now at 3 p.m. CET European time. and that's like 5 or 6 hours back for the US, for the Eastern at least. I am also doing the survey tomorrow. Every time before a big balance patch happens, from now on every Friday, I'll be posting it on my Twitter, which is just ImpetuousPanda, and then on Reddit, of course, on both subreddits, the Runeterra one and the lore competitive one.
Yep. And
the results will be posted on Sunday or Monday, usually always before the patch or the patch notes come out. And this time I'll be doing actually a video. I'll start doing YouTube again starting this week, and I'll do a video analysis of the results with Fresh Lobster actually.
Nice.
And that will be also posted alongside the results this time on Reddit, so you'll all find it there. And aside from that, I'm not really streaming. I might start streaming soon, but if I do, it's just ImpetuousPanda as well everywhere, and mostly just doing deck lists and stuff on Twitter and Reddit mostly, but you'll just find that naturally, I think, if you go on those subreddits.
Yeah, we'll definitely have the link to his Twitter in the description of the video, and I'll be blasting that survey all over our Discord and Twitter. So if you follow us, you'll see the survey, answer the survey. The results are always super fun to go through, and I'm really excited for that video with Lobster. That'll be awesome too. Always want to hear the actual take verbally from you. That'll be super sweet to dig into. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on for episode 56.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Like I said, I think it's always, always great to see you guys being so consistent with content from the beginning, I think, and continuing that through the life cycle of a game. It's really cool to see. So again, congrats on that. And I'm glad to be a small part of it as well.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Yeah, guys, if you aren't following us, all of our links will be in the description as well, but you can follow us on Twitter, join our Discord. Our tournament's full. We're sorry, we kept it to 128, but we'll be doing that. You can watch me cast that on April 10th and laugh at how terrible I am. But get carried by Scarzigs. That's the plan. Until next
plan
time,
B.
guys. That's plan B. Don't speak Spanish. Get carried by Scarzigs. All right, until next time, guys. Catch it.
See you.